Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to dive into something that, well, on the surface, looks pretty simple, a video game called The Trail. But as we're about to see underneath all the pretty graphics and easy controls, there's this surprisingly deep psychological landscape that might just show us a new way to think about well-being. So let's kick things off with a question that really flips the whole idea of gaming on its head. I mean, we usually think games are all about winning, right? You beat the final boss, you get the highest score. But what if a game wasn't about winning at all? What if the whole point was just the journey itself? And, the game that just perfectly captures this idea is The Trail. It looks like just another colorful adventure game, but its design is so intentional, built on these psychological principles that can actually help us cope with stress and build resilience. So let's unpack exactly how it does that. Okay, so you might be wondering, how did we even get to a point where we're talking about a game as being therapeutic? Well, it's because our whole perspective on what games are for has shifted, and pretty dramatically over the last few decades. If you think back to the 80s, the conversation was all about how games could improve things like reaction time or hand-eye coordination. Then, fast forward to the 2000s, and we see the rise of so-called serious games. These are titles built from the ground up for specific goals, like education or health. But today, the conversation is so much broader. We're starting to realize that these really powerful therapeutic benefits can be found in the commercial games that people are already playing just for fun. But how does this actually work? What's going on in our brains that allows a game to feel, well, healing? Let's get into the core psychological principles at play here. Okay, so the first big idea is something called the magic circle. Just think of it like a protective bubble. The second you press start, you're stepping into a world that has its own set of rules. And in that world, failure, crashing the car, losing a life, it has zero real-world consequences. That safety is absolutely crucial. It gives us the freedom to try things, to experiment with new ways of being, and to process our feelings without any actual risk. Next up, we have player agency. This is a fancy term for a simple idea. It's your ability to make choices that actually matter and change the game world. You're not just watching a story. You are the one pulling the strings. It almost becomes this little life simulator, right? It's a safe space where you can practice new behaviors, maybe be a little more strategic or a little more social, all through the character you're controlling. And finally, there's cognitive distraction. A really good game demands your full attention. And that total focus is an incredibly powerful tool, whether it's against physical pain or just those anxious thoughts that like to loop in our heads. It's a mental vacation, almost like a form of active mindfulness that gives our brains a much-needed break from all the stress of the real world. All right, so with those three big ideas in our back pocket, the magic circle, agency, and distraction, let's see how they all come to life in our case study, The Trail. How do these super simple mechanics create such a meaningful experience? So what do you actually do in this game? The whole gameplay loop is intentionally, beautifully simple. You just walk along a path, you gather stuff, you craft items, and you trade with other players to build up a little community. But notice what's missing. There's no fighting, no complicated button mashing. The focus is deliberately shifted away from technical skill and put right on the calm, almost meditative process of the journey. And here's where it all clicks. Every single mechanic in the game is designed to map directly onto a psychological benefit. So managing your resources, that's not just busy work. It's a low-stakes way to practice problem solving. Trading with other players, that fosters a real sense of social connection. And maybe the most powerful one of all, that constant, gentle forward movement on the path, it serves as this beautiful metaphor for making progress and moving through really difficult times, like grief. The game is constantly throwing these tiny, totally manageable problems at you. Oh no, your axe broke, your backpack is full. And each time you have to stop, think, strategize, and then act. You're completing this little microcycle of resilience over and over again. It's like a training gym for your brain, building up that mental muscle for overcoming challenges, but in a space where it costs you absolutely nothing to face. So, we can see how the mechanics build real-world skills, but how does all of that add up to something deeper? Something that feels like genuine purpose?
let's take a look at the philosophy that's baked right into the game's DNA. This quote from the designer Peter Molina really says it all. The goal was never just to keep you busy while you're playing. The entire experience was designed to be reflective, to stick with you, to make you think about your own journey long after you've put your phone down. And that is a radically different goal than what most games are trying to do. And that brings us to this really fundamental difference in philosophy. See, most games are goal-oriented. It's all about getting to the end, achieving that win state. But the trail is process-oriented. The purpose isn't waiting for you at some final destination. The purpose is the walking, the crafting, the looking around. The journey itself becomes the reward, not just the path you take to get there.
And it's fascinating when you look at where players actually find this meaning. Of course, a big part of it is personal progress, crafting better gear, going from rags to riches. But look at how important community contribution is. For a lot of people, working together with others is even more fulfilling. And right up there with it is just the journey itself, the simple act of being present in this quiet, peaceful world. It's that combination that makes it so potent.
And sometimes meaning comes from something as simple as companionship. The game gives you a pet dog that follows you everywhere on your journey. It sounds like a small feature, but it's an incredibly powerful tool for fighting off feelings of loneliness. It gives you this consistent little buddy, this source of emotional support that really mirrors the comfort we get from our pets in the real world.
So you put it all together, this calm environment, these clear, simple tasks, and it leads to this well-known psychological phenomenon called the flow state. You know that feeling, right? When you're so immersed in something that time just kind of melts away and all your distractions disappear. Getting into that state is not only deeply satisfying and amazing for reducing stress, but the act itself can feel purposeful.
All right, so let's zoom all the way out. What does a game like The Trail tell us about the future of digital entertainment? And really, its connection to our own well-being? I think the biggest takeaway here is that healing potential isn't something that's only found in serious games that are prescribed by doctors. It can actually emerge from games that were just designed to be fun. What The Trail proves is that when you design with intention, that line between play, relaxation, and genuine psychological support, well, it can get pretty blurry.
And this leads us to one last really fascinating question. We know that being out in nature is good for us, right? It's restorative. It feels like this deep-seated human need. So could a beautifully crafted digital wilderness tap into that same instinct? Could a game like The Trail give us even a little taste of the same calming benefits we get from a real walk in the woods? Ultimately, The Trail is this incredible metaphor for life's journey. It's a kind of restorative pilgrimage through a digital world. And it proves that meaning isn't always found in some big, dramatic victory at the finish line. Sometimes you find it in the quiet, simple decision to just keep putting one foot in front of the other.